Fun fact about Antarctica, this goes back to being very cautious, not leaving a negative footprint. And another reason why we have the boots, we sanitize the boots before every landing, we scrub the boots after every landing, even before you even set foot in the Antarctic Peninsula. We're gonna have a little vacuum session. We're gonna vacuum out all your clothes, the Velcro patches, in case you have any foreign agents or seeds or anything that might have attached itself to your outerwear. So we're very serious about not bringing anything ashore, not leaving anything behind. We don't even want to bring sand from one landing site to the other because we just don't want to disturb this wonderful, delicate biosphere that we're visiting. On the topic of wildlife, we always keep a safe distance. So in Antarctica, we have a minimum of 5-meter distance between us and any of the wildlife. And you'll see here, it's not readily apparent, but you'll see that there's some flags here. So before we even get ashore, the expedition team, they've already come ashore. They've already set up the entire landing site where you can walk, where you can't walk. If you look to the upper right-hand side here, you're gonna see that penguin highway that their stubby little legs have been working very hard to achieve. We're not gonna mess with that. If your boot goes through a foot of snow, we're going to ask you to backfill it so that a penguin doesn't get stuck. So the whole point is that we are visitors on their turf. But 5 meters is plenty close. You're going to have the best photos. You're going to see the best penguin mating situations where they're stealing pebbles from each other. And then, in December, you can start to see the penguin chicks hatching. So it's just incredibly fun. And I'll say, if you sit like those two photographers in the bottom right, who's to say penguins can actually walk right past you? And in that instance, you just kind of have to sit tight because you can't really move in any direction without basically disturbing the penguin. So just keep that in mind, that the goal is just to be as respectful and keep the distance. But look at that. That is an adventure. This is it's a once in a lifetime experience, and you haven't lived until you've actually smelled a penguin too. I'm not going to give it up. You need to go smell it, come back to me. We'll have a giggle about it. So size matters. I'll touch briefly on this because there's different categories of ships. Anything with 200 and fewer guests, that's what we call a category 1 vessel. That could facilitate up to 2 landings per day, because in the Antarctic Peninsula, you can only have 100 folks ashore at a time. So essentially the Fram, she could maybe accommodate 2 landings per day. The Fridtjof Nansen and the Roald Amundsen are category 2 vessels. They'll take 200 to 500 guests, although I don't think we'll ever fully get to 500. How we do activities there is that we'll divide the 500 into 2 groups of 250. In the morning, half of the group will rotate through their landing because it doesn't take long to rotate through 250, while the other half will typically do their ice cruising. And then we try to switch it in the afternoon. But it is important to just keep in mind that Mother Nature does control everything. So this is, all things considered, glassy conditions. Things can change. Just keep an open mind. But the goal is to get you off the ship twice a day for 2 activities. And ice cruising is just as important as getting a landing in, because you can have just as spectacular. I saw so many humpbacks during ice cruising sessions, and they would just breach not even 5 meters from our Zodiacs. It is just astoundingly special. So we do afford wonderful off-ship experiences. Anything over 500 guests, again, that's a category 3. You're doing the drive-by. You cannot actually offload your guests to get the boots on the ground. So whether or not that counts as the 7th continent, I will leave that to you. All right, so let's talk about the itineraries. I did kind of touch on the fact that once the ships get there, they're all going to do their respective itineraries. This is the one that will be the hosted expedition next December, and this is the highlights of Antarctica. This is a 12-day tour, and essentially, once you get to the hotel in Buenos Aires, you are in our capable hands. We will have boots on the ground. You will get your charter flight times at the hotel. You will get your transfer time. So this is not given out in advance. This will be given to you at the hotel. So all you need to worry about is once you're at the hotel, you are in our capable hands. Just let them tell you when to show up. You show up and adventure ensues. So the charter flights to and from Ushuaia, those are included. We will embark the vessel, cross the Drake Passage, have our allotted time in the Antarctic Peninsula region. And again, if you ever look at our website, you're going to see possible landing sites. But again, we're never going to tell you exactly A, B, C, D, and E, because it is important to not get too attached to a specific itinerary. We are exploring, so we can promise you a value-packed adventure. So we know that that's going to be good, but maybe we go from a plan A landing site to a plan B landing site. So, and you may not even know that we might be on plan C and you might think we're on plan A. So either which way, it is spectacular. So this one will run primarily on the Fritjof Nansen. She'll do this one usually from November through March, and then she'll reposition. So we do have repositioning expeditions along the Chilean coast as we reposition to and from the Antarctic region. Roald Amundsen, the other hybrid electric vessel, she'll run primarily, her meat and potatoes itinerary will be the 16-day Antarctica and Falklands expedition. So there's some king penguins in the Falkland Islands here, but you may have to participate in an optional excursion to see them. But essentially, there might be more British culture, what have you. Lots of people want to go to Falklands. Mid-season, again, the Roald Amundsen is going to drop the Falklands, and we're going to add a few days, and we're going to have Antarctic Circle crossing. So this is another bucket list destination, and these itineraries will typically take place in January and February. The reason being, Antarctica just increases so much in size and ice every year. We have to wait for the ice to sufficiently melt to where we can get that far south. And that's another reason why we've tacked on 6 days, because we don't want to rush it. It takes time to get below the Antarctic Circle. So we want to make sure we're getting you off the ship, we're getting you on shore, we're doing the ice cruising sessions and such. So that's why we have built that into an 18-day. And then the final meat and potatoes itinerary would be the MS Fram 23-day. This one has the highest abundance of wildlife. South Georgia and Galapagos are probably the two places that are always commonly referred to as super high in abundance in wildlife, because this is where you have hundreds of thousands of breeding pairs of king penguins. So this would be a good option. If king penguins are important to you, then you should go to South Georgia. They're not commonly found in Antarctica unless they have strayed. We've seen a couple of stray emperor penguins and king penguins, but they're not common. The most common ones would be Adelie, chinstrap, and gentoo penguins in the Antarctic Peninsula. All right, so if you ask me what is the best time to go to Antarctica, I will never answer that question, because it is wholly dependent on what do you want to experience. If you want to see the crazy penguin mating cycle where they're stealing each other's pebbles, or if you want to see the tabular icebergs and Antarctica in its most pristine shape, then maybe you want to do early season. It's a little bit colder, you have a lot more sea ice, you have the fresh snow. So again, it's mostly untouched, October, November, that's the early season. You can start to see whales because they all come here. They migrate to the Antarctic region to harvest the krill. Mid-season tends to be December, January. That tends to be the most popular time to go, because you kind of get the best of all worlds. You can still see some penguin mating cycles in certain areas. You can see penguin chicks in others. You have the longest days. You have the warmest temperatures. Again, the whales are quite abundant. I went early January and I felt like I was there in February. So there's lots of wildlife to be seen in December and January. If whales are most important to you, then you might want to push it to February, March. That's peak season to see whales. This is when the penguin chicks start to molt. They start to look super awkward, like they're in the little prepubescent teen years. They're getting ready to, head into adult life. So again, it depends on what it is that you're looking to experience. So that's kind of the ins and out of Hurtigruten. I hope that I've given a decent presentation, decent overview of what an experience would look like. And before I hand it back, I just wanted to discuss the current promotions as well. So as it was addressed, that you would get an additional 80 euros per person shipboard credit if you book any expedition really, but if you add to this group here with Edgewood, so you'll have 180 euros per person. And again, we've discussed that beer, wine is included, landings, lectures. Laundry is not included for regular cabins, but I would just allocate, 50 euros for that. So if you each had 180 euros per person shipboard credit, you could arguably get through with no tab. Gratuities are not expected, so that will not be, you're not going to get that piece of paper circulated. It basically, you just tie your credit card to your cruise card and they just, run it before, like the evening before, but the gratuities have been baked in. So there's really not much to write home about. If you partake in spirits, that's not included. but you can book an optional package or you can book a la carte. I was buying a few rounds here a few weeks ago, and Jack and Cokes for my colleagues were like €7. So it wasn't really anything bad either. I would talk the solo traveler offer too, because I think that's important. I think it's against my religion to punish folks for daring or having the audacity to travel solo. So every month we have a whole slew of expeditions and Norway coastal cruises where we waive the single supplement. We're still working on the final pricing for November. I will get that over to Edgewood, but make sure that you seek them out and ask about the solo traveler offers. Right now I have 9 Antarctica departures for this season that are on sale, and a whole variety of Galapagos as well as Norway expeditions. So if there's of interest in other destinations, contact your Edgewood travel advisor. That's all I had. So I shall open the floor for some Q&A. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope I can answer your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn.